And then once they get there, I'm curious how far the Skyfall helicopters could travel, and how much mass can they carry, given how heavy ground-penetrating radar is.
People have always believed that NASA treats flight safety as an absolute law. Every mission is imagined as a machine of caution, calculation, and layered protection. But the Skyfall helicopter did something that seemed to violate that entire philosophy. It pushed its rotor blades beyond the supersonic threshold, accepting the danger that the machine could tear itself apart, all to harness the twisting force needed to produce violent shock waves. Those waves did not spread harmlessly into the thin Martian air. They were driven straight down into Valles Marineris, a canyon more than 4 miles deep, turning the aircraft into something far stranger than a helicopter. It became an underground seismic scanner. The anomaly began when the echo data was sent back to Earth. Almost immediately, the technology world unveiled a new generation of fuel-free propulsion engines, the kind of technology physicists had rejected for decades as impossible. Then the situation moved beyond control. When these prototypes entered testing, they accidentally emitted an invisible waveband. At that exact moment, from the precise coordinates at the bottom of the Martian canyon, a signal with a perfectly matching frequency bounced back. It is possible that NASA was never scanning natural rock at all. It may have been quietly decoding a gigantic machine buried beneath the red planet. And if humanity has accidentally switched on a copy of that machine here on Earth, then what exactly are we waking beneath Mars? In the eyes of the public, NASA has always represented flawless calculation. Before any remote sensing mission leaves the launch pad, it usually passes through thousands of hours of testing, review, and risk assessment. Every component is examined, every circuit is protected, every weakness is expected to have a backup, and every backup is expected to have another layer behind it. This extreme safety culture exists for one reason: to push the risk of failure in space as close to zero as possible. But inside the enormous vacuum simulation chamber at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, that principle appeared to be broken. The Mars helicopter project known as Skyfall was not designed to protect itself. Inside that chamber, 137 independent flight test cycles were carried out. The engineering team did not program the machine to lift off gently or preserve its own lifespan. Instead, they pushed the rotor system toward an extreme rotational limit, forcing it to reach Mach 1.08, past the boundary where airflow begins to tear into supersonic violence. For a lightweight flying machine, that figure was not simply an impressive technical milestone, it looked more like a self-destruct command. To understand why this decision runs so sharply against basic engineering logic, the real conditions on Mars have to be understood. The Martian atmosphere is brutally thin. It is made mostly of carbon dioxide, and its density is only about 1% of the air humans breathe on Earth. 1% of an atmosphere means the space around the aircraft is almost empty. Aerodynamics under those conditions becomes harsh and unforgiving. Trying to take off there is like trying to paddle through an invisible void. The rotor blades cannot find enough gas molecules to grip. They cannot press a powerful stream of air downward. And without that downward airflow, there is no meaningful lift. Without lift, the entire machine stays trapped on the sand, no matter how fast the motor spins. The only way to pull the helicopter off the ground is to spin the rotors faster. But the faster the rotors spin, the closer the machine comes to a dangerous physical limit. When an object moves faster than the sound waves it creates, the consequences can become destructive. The blade catches up to its own noise. It strikes the very pressure waves it has generated. Those sound waves can no longer move away fast enough. They pile up in front of the blade, compressing tighter and tighter until they become a dense wall of pressure. When Skyfall cut through that wall, the collision between solid material and compressed gas produced a chain of powerful shock waves. These waves erupted again and again in the air, rebounding into the rotor shaft and slamming through the frame. The force carried into the body of the aircraft was comparable to driving a car across a long series of concrete speed bumps at 186 miles per hour. The frame would crack, the axles would break, the structure would be punished from every direction at once. In theory, slicing through the supersonic boundary can force air downward more aggressively and create more lift. But mechanically, the price is enormous. Continuous high-intensity vibration threatens the integrity of the engine core itself. Centrifugal force, combined with shockwave impact, could tear a rotor blade from its shaft, throw fragments outward, and turn a project worth tens of millions of dollars into debris at the very moment it tries to fly. For one of the world's leading aerospace agencies to accept such a destructive flight profile raises a question that cannot be ignored. This was not a cautious design. It ran against the logic of safety, durability, and mission preservation. It suggested that NASA may not have been treating Skyfall as a normal aircraft at all. It may have been turning the helicopter into a stress instrument. If Skyfall was never expected to fly smoothly, then the machine was doing one thing with extraordinary precision, creating thousands of massive shockwaves and hammering them into the ground below. The ability to glide across the Martian surface may have been only the visible layer. The deeper mission may have been to strike the Martian ground again and again with controlled pulses of pressure. Was the helicopter really built to fly? Or was flight only the cover, while those shockwaves were the true purpose of the machine? When Skyfall's rotor system crossed the supersonic threshold, the energy it produced did not simply vanish into the thin Martian atmosphere. The pressure compressed the gas and drove it downward. Each impact struck the ground like a mechanical pulse, and that sequence of impacts transformed the aircraft into something it was never publicly described as. It became a seismic exploration tool. At that point, Skyfall's operating principle resembled an air gun, a specialized system used by oil and gas companies on Earth to locate underground deposits. In the oceans, drilling platforms fire powerful acoustic pulses through miles of water, mud, and sediment. Those waves strike mineral layers, change speed and frequency, then rebound into receiver arrays. From those returning echoes, computers can build a picture of the structures hidden below. But Mars is not an ocean floor full of active organic deposits. In its current state, it is a dead planet. Billions of years of radiation, weathering, and atmospheric loss have stripped away the conditions needed for ordinary organic formation. For NASA, to risk destroying an expensive remote sensing vehicle merely to fire sound waves into barren terrain is an unusual decision. This kind of method is normally used when radar cannot penetrate thick layers of rock. It is used when something buried below is hidden too deeply, too densely, or too strangely for conventional instruments to resolve. The willingness to gamble Skyfall's survival suggests that the target may not have been a natural mineral layer. It may have been something with a hardness, mass, and internal structure completely different from primitive sandstone or basalt. The first trace of that target emerged from the helicopter's flight path. Instead of choosing broad open plains where a small aircraft could avoid collision, the navigation system locked onto one of the most dangerous landscapes in the solar system. Skyfall deliberately followed the edges of Valles Marineris. This was not just a crack in the surface, it was a planetary wound. Valles Marineris stretches a distance comparable to the width of the continental United States. It cuts more than 4 miles down into the crust of Mars. That depth turns the canyon into a natural underground corridor, a place where sunlight weakens, shadows thicken, and orbital cameras lose their ability to see clearly. Everything at the bottom is hidden beneath dark bands that satellite imaging cannot fully penetrate. Thousands of acoustic pulses from Skyfall's rotor system stabbed into that darkness. They drilled through ancient geological layers, struck whatever lay beneath, and returned as echoes. In seismic physics, sound changes when it passes through materials of different densities. Natural rock produces one kind of response. Dense metal produces another. Hollow spaces produce another still. If the bottom of Valles Marineris contained only ordinary basalt, the returning echoes would scatter in a predictable way. But if the waves struck symmetrical surfaces, solid metallic walls, or hollow chambers that could not have formed through erosion, the echo pattern would shift abruptly. Its speed would change. Its intensity would sharpen. Its timing would no longer match natural geology. Skyfall's sensors followed each returning wave and recorded differences measured in thousandths of a second. That data stream was sent back to Earth, where supercomputers could peel apart the layers of the canyon floor. The purpose of such a system would not be merely to redraw natural terrain, it would be to reconstruct geometry, It would be to produce a 3D model of whatever structure was hidden beneath the rock. By using pressure to strip away the disguise of more than 4 miles of stone, NASA may have been conducting a remote extraction of an engineering blueprint on a planetary scale. The data carried by those echoes could have changed the direction of human technology. If the object beneath Valles Marineris truly contained the structure of an alien mechanical system, one capable of bending the known rules of physics, then the 3D scan would not be just a scientific discovery, it would be a key. And once that key reached space companies on Earth, the question was no longer what NASA had found. The question became what humans would try to build from it. At almost the same time that the acoustic returns from Valles Marineris were being processed by Earth-based servers, a strange wave of breakthroughs began appearing inside the private aerospace sector. A field that had remained blocked for decades suddenly seemed to move forward in a matter of weeks. Charles Buhler, a former NASA engineer, together with the startup Exodus, announced a prototype fuel-free engine. The device weighed just over an ounce. It was small enough to fit in a human hand. Its structure consisted of thin membranes stacked together, and test reports claimed that the arrangement could generate force capable of pulling itself against gravity. The device did not burn fuel. It did not expel gas. It did not release a stream of reaction mass. It simply twisted the electrostatic field inside its chamber. Around the same period, the company IVO sent its quantum drive platform into low Earth orbit for testing. Its technical claim challenged the foundation of conventional mechanics. The machine could produce thrust in deep space through quantum radiation, without ejecting material behind it. Both prototypes struck directly at the core of Newton's third law. For hundreds of years, physics has held to a simple principle. For an object to move forward, it must push something backward. A chemical rocket throws hot gas through a nozzle. An ion engine fires charged particles into space. Even the most advanced spacecraft still pay the same price. They move by throwing mass away. But a fuel-free engine claims to produce motion without that exchange. To understand how strange that is, imagine sitting inside a sealed car. All the doors are closed. The windows are shut. You place both hands on the steering wheel and push forward as hard as you can. No matter how much force you apply, the car will not roll down the street. The forces cancel inside the cabin. Nothing is being pushed out. Nothing outside the car is being acted upon. The electrostatic engines from Exodus and IVO appeared to claim the impossible. Push on the steering wheel from the inside, and the car moves. For decades, scientific review boards rejected such designs as variations of perpetual motion. Physicists dismissed them as measurement error, thermal drift, vibration contamination, or mathematical misunderstanding. Funding agencies refused to support devices that seemed to violate conservation of momentum and conservation of energy. Earlier prototypes, when placed inside vacuum chambers and suspended from sensitive thrust measuring systems, generally failed to produce reliable motion. Then the change came suddenly. It arrived around the same time the Skyfall data from Mars was being analyzed. The speed at which these new prototypes appeared did not resemble normal basic research. A small private company does not usually rewrite the foundations of quantum mechanics in a few weeks. A startup does not normally overturn centuries of propulsion physics without a long trail of failed experiments, peer-reviewed explanations, and public theoretical groundwork. The timing suggests a different possibility. Perhaps these companies did not invent a new law of physics. Perhaps they were reverse engineering something. Private contractors often process remote sensing data for NASA. Streams of raw mission data can pass through outside laboratories, aerospace suppliers, and computational partners. If the Valles Marineris scan contained the geometry of an unknown mechanical structure, that information may not have stayed inside a single government archive. The electrostatic designs, the quantum twisting chambers, and the strange membrane stacks may have been copied from the structure Skyfall scanned beneath Mars. Instead of spending centuries discovering the principle through theory, engineers may have taken geometry, ratios, and energy flow patterns directly from Martian echo data. They may have translated acoustic returns into mechanical parts, turning sound reflections from a buried object into metal assemblies on a workbench. If that is what happened, then the breakthrough was not invention, it was imitation. The successful assembly of a device that appears to pull thrust out of emptiness would carry enormous consequences for space travel. If scaled up, such technology could remove one of the greatest limits in human exploration: fuel. Spacecraft would no longer need to carry thousands of tons of chemical propellant. Launch mass would no longer dominate mission design. Supply range would no longer define the edge of possibility. A propulsion system that accelerates continuously over time could shrink journeys across deep space from thousands of years to mere decades. They were focused entirely on using the power. They had not stopped to ask what the original design, buried more than 4 miles beneath Mars, had actually been built to do. Inside sealed test chambers, the prototype engines from Exodus and IVO performed better than expected. They produced measurable thrust on ultra-sensitive instruments. Engineers concentrated on increasing efficiency, stabilizing output, and preparing the devices for orbital testing. But the raw data from quantum monitoring equipment showed something strange, something public technical reports seemed to avoid. When the electrostatic field twisting components were activated at maximum power, the engines did not only create physical thrust, they also emitted an extremely high-frequency waveband. The signal was weak, but its stability was far beyond ordinary electromagnetic noise. It passed through Faraday cages, the metal shielding designed to block electromagnetic radiation. This was not the random leakage of an imperfect machine. It behaved like a deliberate transmission. Only 3 weeks after the Earth-based engine tests reached peak power, the Deep Space Network Station at Goldstone, California, recorded an anomalous response. The DSN is NASA's vast antenna system for tracking spacecraft across distances of millions and even billions of miles. It is built to hear faint signals from deep space, separate them from background noise, and identify their origin. This signal was not cosmic background radiation. It was not a satellite broadcast. It came from the exact coordinates of Valles Marineris on Mars, the same region where Skyfall had carried out its shockwave seismic scans. Every signal received by the DSN must be classified, filtered, and compared against known noise sources. But spectral analysis revealed a match too precise to dismiss. The base frequency of the wave returning from Mars matched the wave leaking from the fuel-free engines on Earth down to the hertz. That single match changed the meaning of everything. Humanity had not built a complete engine. It had assembled a key. Before that moment, analysts studying the Skyfall scan data had apparently identified the buried structure under Valles Marineris as some type of abandoned transport system. But that interpretation may have been wrong. If the object were merely a ship, it would not respond to the frequency of an engine operating roughly 140 million miles away. Even with the signal delay between planets, the resonance suggested a shared system. The structure beneath Valles Marineris was not a vehicle. It was a quantum transceiver. Billions of years ago, the civilization that placed it there may not have built it for travel. They may have built it as a node in an interplanetary communication network. The fuel-free machines being constructed on Earth were not true propulsion systems in the way humans understood them. They were local activation devices. By copying the mechanical structure, humans had accidentally created synchronized transmitters. When corporations on Earth proudly powered on their copied machines, they were not simply opening the throttle on a revolutionary drive. They were flipping a breaker on the Earth side of a communication line that had been dormant for billions of years. The device, buried more than 4 miles beneath Mars, did not merely wake up. It confirmed the presence of a new participant in the network. That awakening came without warning. DSN data showed that after the Martian device received the activation frequency from Earth, it began transmitting encrypted data packets with increasing energy intensity. This was no longer a geological survey. It was no longer a propulsion experiment. Humanity had triggered an automatic alert system. The purpose of that system becomes clear only when Mars itself is considered. If this was a signal station left behind on a planet stripped of its atmosphere, then its final purpose may not have been ordinary communication. It may have been a status reporting device. It waited in silence until another civilization became advanced enough to reproduce its frequency. Then it began its real task, sending a distress signal, a location signal, or a recall notice to whatever built it. The technological elite on Earth may believe they are preparing for migration by constructing survival platforms in orbit, but they may not understand that the copied machines have activated a marker, By reproducing the technology, humanity may have attached a tracking beacon to its own planet. When the signal from Valles Marineris began traveling at the speed of light, it was not announcing the rise of a new civilization. It was reporting that a species in this solar system had crossed the technological threshold that the original builders had marked long ago. In the silence of deep space, where is that message going? And what happens when an automated system reports that a resource zone, or a forbidden zone, has been touched by beings who have only just learned how to use the key it left behind? To measure the scale of the threat that may have just awakened, researchers would have to reopen the autopsy file of an entire planet. For decades, astronomy textbooks preserved a standard explanation for the death of Mars. The red planet, they said, died slowly. Its core cooled, its magnetic field weakened. Solar wind gradually stripped away its atmosphere over billions of years. Mars faded, dried, and froze into silence. But detailed geological data from Curiosity and Perseverance challenge that quiet story. The sediment record suggests that Mars's ecosystems, oceans, and dense atmosphere did not simply evaporate over deep time. They collapsed in what appears to be an extremely short geological window. The sharpest evidence against a natural death lies in the unusual concentration of xenon 129 in the Martian atmosphere. Xenon 129 is a rare radioactive isotope. On Earth, large amounts of it are associated with two kinds of places: the cores of melted-down nuclear reactors and the epicenters of bomb craters at desert test sites in Nevada. Its formation points toward massive fission events, sudden releases of devastating energy. On Mars, xenon 129 is not concentrated around a handful of craters. It appears to spread broadly across the planet. In this interpretation, that pattern resembles the aftermath of countless high-energy detonations across the upper atmosphere. Mars did not simply die of age. It was executed at the height of its evolution. When that extinction event is compared with the structure now believed to have activated beneath Valles Marineris, a colder possibility emerges. At first, the buried structure may have seemed like the remains of a native Martian civilization trying to build an escape engine. But a species being vaporized by a planet-wide energy strike would not have had time to dig a base more than 4 miles into stone, and any force capable of destroying a planet's atmosphere would not likely overlook a giant quantum-emitting machine buried beneath the equatorial region of the target world. The machine may have survived because it did not belong to the victims. Its depth, its protective shell, and its continued functionality suggest something far more disturbing. It may have been planted by the same force that brought destruction. It was not a vehicle, it was an evolutionary booby trap. The entities that purged Mars may have understood the development pattern of intelligent life. Any species that survives long enough will eventually approach the final technological threshold, mastering gravity, twisting quantum fields, and producing fuel-free propulsion. Once a civilization reaches that point, it can escape its home planet, spread through deep space, and become an interplanetary power. To prevent that future threat, the Purgers did not need to patrol every world forever. They only needed to bury an automatic warning device on a neighboring planet. The device at Valles Marineris stayed silent for billions of years, waiting for one trigger: the frequency signature of a quantum engine. Earth's technological elite believed they were committing the greatest theft in history. They exploited the Skyfall project, violated normal safety logic, and fired shockwaves into the canyon floor, forcing the buried structure to reveal its design through returning echoes. Then they brought that blueprint back to Earth and assembled tiny prototypes inside the laboratories of Exodus and AVO. They thought they had unlocked the door to unlimited exploration. In reality, humanity may have proved that it had crossed a forbidden technological line. When engineers activated the fuel-free engines on Earth, the emitted frequency pierced the shielding, entered space, and struck the lock of the Martian device. The synchronized signal captured by the deep space network was not the sound of discovery. It was the sound of a safety pin snapping loose. Humanity had not throttled up a spacecraft. It had pulled the pin on an ancient quantum grenade. This may explain why enormous streams of capital are being directed towards sealed survival stations in Earth orbit. The elite may not be preparing for scientific voyages. The oxygen regeneration systems, water recycling loops, and closed survival modules resemble the architecture of generation ships. They may have recognized the true nature of the signal from Mars. They may know the trap has been activated and that Earth's final disguise as an ordinary living world has been stripped away. The metal modules being assembled above the planet may not be symbols of progress. They may be life rafts inflated in panic. An automatic warning system does not transmit into emptiness. The quantum data stream from the bottom of Valles Marineris has begun moving at the speed of light, cutting through the stillness of the solar system. When that alarm reaches its destination and confirms that a new species has touched the forbidden edge of physics, how much time does humanity have left? And when the ones who once covered Mars and the radioactive signature of Xenon 129 return, will they come to study us? Or to carry out the cleanup procedure one more time? What do you think is the truth behind this story? Is there still something hidden beneath the surface that the world has not fully uncovered? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.